Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon, and I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies at Charles Darwin University. Welcome to Outrider 53. Words. This is our next instalment in our writing series for Outrider, and I particularly wanted to spend a whole session talking about the bricks in the wall of your research. Yes, words. You might remember in Outrider 50, we talked about E.P. Thompson, and I summoned and quoted particular phrases from his work. Quote, "the condescension of posterity," end of quote, and quote, "the working class were present at their own making," end of quote. Now, knowledge changed. The world changed because of word selection. Think about the role of posterity and making in those sentences. So a word can change the world. So when we talk about words, we're also summoning worlds, particularly academic words. And so our session today is going to work through some quite disparate literature. There's a lot of conversations about academic literacies and academic writing, a lot of pretty basic how-to guides. We're using some of that, but also improving the register of your language. Very important word that we're going to talk about. And also importantly, increasing your confidence with language. I know, and the reason we're in the middle of this series is so many of you contacted me and said you feel you're writing really badly and you want some help and support. So what I'm going to do today, there's some big, expansive tips I'm going to offer you, but there's also a few tips I'm talking about today that if you implement them, your writing will transform immediately. So there's quick and easy stuff and more complex stuff for you to ponder in the rest of your career. Now, words matter a lot. They allow teachers to teach, policymakers to make policy, and healthcare professionals to communicate important ideas about health and well-being. It's been studied that all of us use, unbelievably, about 16,000 words a day in our conversation, in our presentations, in our emails, in social media. But we very rarely think about the words themselves. We only think about the ideas that are communicated through those words. It's like we think about the soup and talk about the soup rather than the bowl in which the soup is placed. So this is the session where we focus on words and we focus on their power. We're not thinking about ideas this week. Signifiers, we're thinking about words in and of themselves. Now, when we were kids, we know that one word could summon magic. Abracadabra. Fantastic. So what we're going to do as adults now is enter the world of words and the words in our worlds. And therefore there will be, yes, Tara's 10 tips to enable your word development. And as I said, some are really simple and straightforward that you can implement immediately. Some will take a little bit more time. So let's do it. Tara's tip 1, academic writing is precise writing. Now, since I was a PhD student, I have fought because so many people have abused academic writing, describing it as opaque or verbose or obstructionary. We get a lot of bad press. Academics supposedly don't write well. Now, even when I was a very young human, I never understood that critique, colleagues, because we as academics, words must do very precise work for us. We work in disciplines, we must have repeatability, accountability and transparency. Our words must be precise. Our words are specialist. They have an etymology and they have a trajectory, and we have to acknowledge that legacy. That's great scholarship. And that's why reading matters so much, because reading academic work is how we learn how to write academic work. And we talked about that last week, because when we read academic work in our disciplines, we learn about genres, but we also learn about vocabulary. And that's why I lose the will to live when students cite dictionaries in their thesis. There's very few things that I go, and start banging my head against a table. But whenever I see students, and this is my own students, let alone other people that I'm examining, when I see as stated in the Oxford English Dictionary, I lose the plot. Dictionaries are great, but not for academic work. You see, we don't need a dumbed down consensus definition, which is what a dictionary is. It's a consensus definition. We all sort of agree this is what the word means. Instead, in academic work, in academic words, we need to ensure we have the legacy of the word, the trajectory, the etymology of the word. Words matter. We use them precisely, and we use them precisely in academic debates, rather than relying on very dated dictionary definitions. And speaking of how we use very precise words, let's move to Tara's tip 2. Value keywords in your discipline. Now, between 6 and 7 million academic papers are published every single year. And the reason we write is to be read. So how exactly, with all those papers, are you going to find an audience? For your article to have a fighting chance to be found, you must use keywords effectively. Now, the key with keywords is to be as specific as possible. Now, I love me zombies. I do a lot of work on zombies. Yeah, and zombies, great word. But there's a lot of stuff on zombies. So what increases and enhances the work that I do is I look at zombie studies. Zombie studies, great phrase, and I get very specialist literature. But if I really want to go specialist in acting Ulrich Beck's work in particular, I search for zombie concepts, or indeed for people really in the historical know, zombie categories. So always remember to use methodology as a keyword if you can, but be as precise as possible. So don't just put in clinical trial, put in prospective cohort study. Be precise. And don't be afraid either to use trendy and emerging terms like COVID studies or COVID-19 studies. We're seeing those keywords particularly have enhanced citations. And also later on in your career, or maybe from your PhD, if you invent a concept, then please feel free to use that as a keyword. So I invented the Google effect, digital dieting, the University of Google. When you hear those phrases, I invented them. So why wouldn't I use my own keywords? Thanks for playing. 3, supplement your reading with listening. Now, I love learning new words, and my beloved husband Jamie also loves learning new words, and we play Scrabble a lot. We love Scrabble, so it's probably fantastic that we married each other, because we would have probably really inflamed other partners, like, can you just stop with the words, girlfriend? But we sort of love it. But a great way to enlarge and intensify your vocabulary if you're not married to Jamie Quinton is through listening to audiobooks and podcasts. Now, for about the last 10 years, I've listened to an hour of audiobooks every single morning at the gym. All sorts of genres, fiction, non-fiction, everything. Fantastic. And what happens through audiobooks is I learn new words and I enlarge my working vocabulary. And the gift of, say, audiobooks is we learn how to pronounce the words as well. So for those of you thinking about audiobooks, not only, you might be using them in your research, or you might use that as a dissemination mode for yourself going forward, recognize that listening to words is very special, because it allows you to put content into a context, so you really learn quickly. And there's also research that's showing that when we hear words, we have a tendency to remember them more effectively because of the different processing component of the brain. Interesting, something to think about. 4, I want you to use this new vocabulary in your writing and daily life. So learn words that are appropriate to your discipline. Learn words that you can use in your PhD, in your research career today. There's a lot of benefit in learning a word that you can take for a walk and you can apply immediately. Learning sort of a list of words, like we sort of taught at primary school, learning a list of words and hoping that they're going to stick, that's not very efficient. But taking words for a walk in your research will ensure that you learn how they operate for you in research, in your discipline. So yeah, ontology, methodology, epistemology. Please use them in your daily work. Have a go. Take them for a walk. Put them into your research. Now, don't be worried about being embarrassed if you sort of get the definition a bit wrong. We all do that. You are a PhD student. You are an early career researcher, okay? This is a university. It's a learning environment. Test yourself. Try stuff out. Ask questions. And when you're writing, and I get all my students to write what we often call discussion papers, what that is basically is low stakes writing. So it exists for students to test themselves with their supervisor and get that iterative early feedback. Now, through my undergraduate and postgraduate years, and I started right from my first year, can I say, I had a little exercise book that I would sit next to me while I was reading. And when there was a word in the reading that I didn't understand, I would write it down and then I would do deep work in the afternoon, providing a paragraph about what that word means, where it's come from, the specialist usage. And then, of course, I'd take that exercise book around with me. And when I was on public transport, when I was in a queue, when I was waiting for something, I would open the exercise book and I would continue to learn that vocabulary. Now, interestingly, the research that I read this week gave that thing that I've done for 30 years has actually given that a phrase, and that's called the treasure hunt for vocabulary. The treasure hunt for vocabulary, and it works very effectively. Cool. 5. Now, give yourself an ambitious reading program. This is the area that really worries me, to be honest, about contemporary universities. Now, last week, we talked very strongly and used the research about the benefits of reading for writing. And the people who read a lot learn a lot of new words. And this, of course, is the best way to learn new words because you're reading them in an accurate and evocative context. Therefore, program your reading. Give yourself a reading program every single week. For example, for my entire adult life, I have a reading program of 5 books a week and 20 refereed articles a week. Now, mostly I get way over that, but I never let myself off the hook. I want 5 books a week, at least 20 refereed articles a week, every week for my life. And because of that, I've learned a lot and I read a lot. So everything you read, doesn't matter how weird it is, and I read a lot of weird stuff, everything you read, you learn something. And therefore, reading with diversity allows you to write with diversity. But never allow your reading to lag. Reading is crucial. Reading is the first step to high quality writing. 6, here we go. I'm going to use the word know your register and know your audience. Register is a word we rarely hear anymore, and that's a real tragedy, I think, because it's crucial for academics, particularly academics who enact translational research, which of course is the allied health professions, education, on we go. Register refers to the formality of your writing, the style of your writing. So academic writing is of a high register. Formal writing, no colloquialisms, no subjectivity, no contractions, can't, don't, won't. We don't use that stuff. Objective rather than subjective. And we use expertise rather than experience. So this is high register. And I don't apologise for that. High register enables precision. But if you're aware of the rules, the genre, if you like, the rules of the register, then when you're enacting translational research, when you are finding new audiences for your research, you know how to alter the register and alter your vocabulary. Now, a great guide into this academic register was provided by the wonderful University of Manchester, and they've made publicly available their academic phrase bank, and I'll do a link to that at the end of this Outrider. Dissemination is based on the relationship between knowledge, platform, and audience. And so when we write, our first question must always be, who is the audience? And the audience determines the register. We can then select the best platform to communicate our knowledge. Now that may be Twitter, it may be Threads, it may be Insta, whatever, it may be a podcast, but all of this requires consideration about dissemination, and all of it starts with understanding the academic register. Okay, 7. Let's get more precise. Know the language in the domain of your discipline. This is crucial. This is, I would argue, one of the greatest problems we have in higher degrees in doctoral programs around the world at the moment. And some of this stuff has been caused by COVID, but there's no doubt this problem has been intensifying in the last 25 years. As our longitudinal studies have shown, and we've cited a lot of them in the last few weeks, undergraduates are now reading less and they are writing less. And that has a huge consequence on our doctoral programs. But what that particularly means, let me explain what it means. What it particularly means is that domain-specific words are either not being taught or are not being applied. So this is the terms, the concepts, the tropes, the ideas that exist in your discipline are not read, reinforced, and applied through undergraduate assessment protocols. This is, yes, academic vocabulary, but it's more than that. It is academic literacy in particular domains and disciplines of knowledge. Now, recent research from Jim Burke and others have shown that what is required to do this is explicit and direct instruction in the language domain of a discipline. What this means is if you want your student to understand the language domain of physics, you have to teach it. Assuming osmotically they'll sort of pick it up has been shown to be wrong. So if you want the language domain in a discipline, you must teach it overtly. So therefore, I draw you to one of my great former students, Dr. Narelle Hunter. Narelle has done some incredibly challenging, amazing, remarkable work on disciplinary literacies and how it is taught. And again, I'll link to Narelle's work. Narelle, you're the best. Narelle is changing the world. 8, grammar matters, and so does the error count. Okay, now I know talking about grammar is about as inspirational as washing underwear. I get it. But it really matters to academic writing, because if your error count starts to increase, it's called an error count. If your error count starts to increase in spelling and grammar, then examiners, peer reviewers, everybody starts to question the research itself. If you can't get the carrier, the vessel of research right, we start to question the research itself. Grammar matters because what it does is code your writing in a particular way so it is understandable by an academic audience. So again, this is one of those quick and dirty tips. I'm going to provide you with some very, very quick interventions today that even if you don't understand grammar, you haven't been taught grammar, if you do these things, your writing will improve today. Firstly, use active voice. Make your writing precise and clear. And if you don't know what active voice is, pretty easy definition. Active voice is the dog chased the cat. Active voice, the dog chased the cat. Passive voice is the cat was chased by the dog. So what we need in active voice is a very precise relationship between noun and verb. Ta. Passive voice is wordy and it is obstructionary to meaning. I often say to my students, it's baggy writing. Also, and this is a Brabazon style hint, always use short sentences. If I have one characteristic of my writing, most people can pick my writing in about 12 and a half seconds because I use incredibly short sentences. What has been described by a reviewer as a staccato style. Boof, 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 boof. That's how I construct my sentences. So if you can, not do what I do, because I only write short sentences because that's a particular way I want to communicate, but if you start to shorten your sentences and use an active voice, then your writing will improve immediately, and that will give you the space to improve other elements of your writing. So think about active verbs, strong concrete nouns, and cut out every extraneous word. 9, occupy the present through your words. One word can transform an academic article or a book. Remember E.P. Thompson, the condescension of posterity. Words trigger action and words trigger an emotional state. They are the fuel for knowledge and transcendent thinking. Words can also limit the audience for your research. They can also expand the reach of your writing. And how that's determined is by your register, by your word selection. Now, Sharon Ann Klinger used the great phrase, power words. Power words. So words that summon emotion, meaning, and behavioural change. Very interesting. So academic life does require this type of motivation, this commitment to connecting words with action. Now, one of my favourite writers has always been Ralph Waldo Emerson. I read him as a very, very young woman. And he stated that words are also actions, and actions are a kind of word. Brilliant. Start to think about the relationship between the words you choose and the actions you wish to summon. Focus on slicing through the mediocrity. So hard to do. And you do it through words by defining your purpose, summoning action, summoning your present, and engaging with other humans. Every word that you select in your present is a step into your future. Words make a stand. Words occupy space. And 10, finally, thank you for hanging with me. Again, this is a simple, quick, dirty tip. If you do this, your writing will change. 10, remove the hedges and the definites. And no, I'm not talking about shrubberies, I promise. But I do want to log the great work of Jonah Berger in this work on hedges. Let me explain. If you're going to make any change in your writing today, then just do this one thing and your writing will transform. So what I need you to do is do a control find on the following words and phrases. May or might, seem, seemed, could, in my opinion, I think, I feel, I believe, it seems to me, maybe. Remove those words. They're called hedges. But I also want you to remove the definites from your prose. Let's list these. Definitely, clearly, obviously, undeniably, irrefutably, absolutely, unquestionably, always, every time. Okay. Research is not founded in underconfidence, and neither is it founded in unverified overconfidence. So at its most basic, do a search through your thesis, do a search through your publications and research. I do it every time before I send it off to a journal, by the way, and I search for these 18 words and phrases just in case. And what happens is you just remove them. And when you remove them, your writing immediately improves. Words matter because they are a gateway into a world. Remember, abracadabra. And now that we're adults, we can see how precise, careful word selection can build a world of knowledge and clarity and precision. I wish you love, light and peace. Tea out.